Hey there, Joe Brady back again, and this video we're going to take a look at some black and white conversion options using Adobe Photoshop. Photoshop offers you a lot of different options, but just a couple of things will get you really good results in preparing your files for black and white printing. Now we're going to use Photoshop's internal options as well as a third-party plugin to create our black and whites. Which one's going to work best is probably going to depend on the exact image you use. That's why I'm going to show you a couple of different ones. So I know the results work. I know the printing process is amazing because I have my result right here. I already got the print back. This is the image I got back from my friends at Digital Silver Imaging. It is just outstanding. And along with the image that I did in Lightroom, these are both going to get hung up in my house. So hope you enjoy, have a lot of fun, and I hope you learned something that you can put to use right away. Alrighty, in this video we're going to take an image and we're going to do some black and white conversions using Adobe Photoshop. And you might be wondering, well, Joe, why are we in Lightroom? Because I use the Develop module as my Adobe Camera Raw. That's where all my images start off, so I find it easier. If you're an Adobe Camera Raw person, then all the sliders are exactly the same. And what I wanted to do was add a little bit more pop to this image. I'm not going to go through the exact demo, but I'll just show you the after. It's not important. But you can see kind of over here the settings that I've chosen. If you wanted to copy them for any reason, they are there. I also did a little bit of hue, saturation, luminance adjustments, and that's about it. Mostly everything was done in the basic panel. Now, I really want the image about right here, and I don't want this tree. So that's going to have to be fixed in Photoshop. So let's take this and edit in Photoshop. So that's Photo, edit in Adobe Photoshop, or Command or Control E. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so here's our image in Photoshop, and this is the crop I want. And you can see that I've got this really annoying tree here. In fact, let me go to full screen here. I've got that here, so that needs to go. Again, a topic for another day, how ways that you can do this, but that needed to go. So I painted that out, so there we go. So this is the image I want to convert over. Now, just for time's sake, I'm going to decrease the resolution of this file because I guess it's pretty big. So let's go to image size and see where we're at. And let's see the pixels. All right, 88 by 45 at 240 pixels per inch. I'm going to set this to 300 because that's what the folks at DSI like, just so that our edits move a little faster. I'll cut it at about in half. I'll hit OK. So it'll make the image size a little smaller, just make our edits move a little faster. That's all. It's just a housekeeping thing. Normally you would not do that. Leave your image the full resolution, but again, just for recording purposes so that we don't have to sit and watch things like these spinning little things go on, I'm just going to resize it. Okay, there's our image smaller now. I don't need the two layers anymore either, so I'm going to go ahead and flatten this. Again, just to save some speed. All right, so let's put this in the middle of the screen and let's take a look at what we can do. Well, the first thing would be, well, kind of obvious. We can just come up to here to Hue Saturation, create an adjustment panel for that, and simply pull all the saturation out. Does it make a black and white? Yes, it does. Is it a good black and white? No, it's actually kind of terrible. And generally, I think you're going to find if you just do this, that it's not going to give you a good black and white conversion. So it may, who knows, you might have an image that it happens to work perfectly. And if you like it, by the way, give it a try. It's not hurting anything. So we'll turn that off. Let's also take a look here. There is a black and white adjustment service built into Photoshop, and already it's looking good. This is the default. So there's our color, there's our black and white. But maybe we'd like to add a little drama. And if you remember when we did this in Photoshop, we had in the Hue Saturation Luminance panel that targeted adjustment tool. Well, we kind of have this thing. It's kind of this little flying finger here. So if we click on that and come into the piece of the image that we want to adjust, I can click right in here, and if I push right, it makes it lighter. If I push left, it makes it darker. Actually does a really nice job. And in general, I think I'm going to want to have the darker blue sky to make the peaks and the snow on the peaks and the clouds just have more impact, and it already looks really nice. Now these are going to be green trees, so I could move in and out of these, see if I want them. Oh, I think I do want them a little lighter, and maybe back here a little bit darker. Now for the clouds, so we mess with the clouds, we're going to mess with the whole thing. So let's take a look and see what we've got here. If we turn this on and off, that's not terrible. Maybe on top of this we want to add some curves to it. So I'm going to come down to here and add a curves adjustment layer. And you can do it the old-fashioned way, which would involve actually putting a couple of points on the curve. And if I want to increase the midtones and the highlights and darken the other colors, I could just add this little bit of S-curve. And that works pretty well. We turn that on and off. You can see that that's added more power to the image. Just to show you, I'm going to turn that off for a second and do another one. Because just like when we did our black and white adjustments, we have the finger over here, and we can click on here and it will just lighten or darken. So if I push up, it lightens, push down, it darkens, and it will just affect that tonality in the image. So that's an option as well. I think I like the first one we did better, where we did it manually, where I added the points and then built in an S-curve here. So what else can we do? Well, how about if we just add a little bit more contrast? So let's go to brightness contrast. And very simple tool to use, add a little more contrast. I think the brightness is probably fine. And pretty good. I can hide all three of these layers, and you see there's where we started, and there's where we are now. Photoshop is pretty powerful this way, and it's really not a bad job. So I'm going to temporarily turn these all off. Actually, I'm going to keep black and white on, because I'm going to add one more. I'm going to go back to black and white, and I'm going to try something different. If you look underneath the defaults, if I click on here, you see different types of filters. So if I wanted to see the effect like a yellow filter would provide, let me turn off the original one. If I choose a red filter or a yellow filter, actually it's very close to what we already had, so that's not much different. I could see infrared. Let's see what infrared does, which takes all the greens, all the foliage, and makes it very light. I could make it high contrast red filter. Oh, that's quite dramatic. So I've got this, and gee, maybe I want to just back off on it a little bit. So let's bring the blues and the cyans up just a little bit. And I can't say that I don't like that. That's pretty cool. And again, we started there to there. And one of the beauties of this image in black and white is by making the sky darker, how much more pop and power the snow on the peaks has. So this is also another option, not too bad. So those were just a couple of basic ways that you could do this in Photoshop. Let's take a look at another one. I'm going to duplicate the background layer first so I have a copy to play with. And let's see, we can go into channels and turn off the other channels. There's just the red channel. There's the green channel. There's the blue channel. Now, blue channel you'd rarely use for black and white. Green channel is actually not terrible. Red is pretty good. So if I come back to layers now, actually, that's not terrible. That's something that could be used as well. In fact, even on top of this, let's see what happens if we add a black and white on top of that. Get the finger over here and darken the sky again. In fact, we can go kind of really dark. And that's another option. So just going to just the red channel, adding a black and white adjustment by bringing down the skies. Again, once more, we have a really nice image. So those are some demos, some ways, and there are more, yes. We could go into lots of different ways. We could spend days doing this, but I wanted to give you a couple of easy ones real quick. Now let's see how Photoshop deals with external plugins. So I'm going to go turn this off. I'm going to go back into here, make sure all my channels are on, and we're going to go into our friend Nik Silver Efex again, the same thing that we did when we were in Lightroom. And let's take a look in there, because having Silver Efex done in Photoshop adds us a couple of different advantages because it's going to happen on its own layer. Okay, so here's our base image in Nick. Let's just go ahead and make this full screen. Again, I'm going to move the 50/50 or the before-after slider over here. And I can see over on the left here some possible interesting variations right away. Let's see what high structure looks like. That's kind of nice. So we can just that quickly went from there to there. One of the advantages that the Nick filter does is it really gives you a lot more options for making these skies really pop. And just the basic conversion, wow, that's really nice. I'm going to go to selective adjustments up here, click on a control point. I want to make these kind of fluffy clouds. I think they're cirrus, if I remember these right. And I'm going to add a bunch of structure to that, also brighten them up, also add some contrast, just to make these really pop. In fact, I'm going to add a lot of structure to them. And I'm going to hold down the Alt so that I can take this adjustment over to these other clouds. And you can see how they really add separation. In fact, let me move this over. Are there any over here we want to add? Maybe. Let's take one, put it right over in here. And now along with that, I want to darken the sky up in this corner, kind of as a semi-vignette, just to make this a little darker. And by the way, this will change the size of the circle that the effect takes place in. Now, it's only going to affect what's underneath this point, and then it will fade off as it hits the end of that circle. So I'm going to bring the brightness down just a little bit here, just a little bit, so that it adds that little darkness to the corner. And that quickly, we have gone from there to there. And as I look at that, is there really anything else I want to do to this image? And I have to honestly say, no. That's one of the beauties of Silver Efex. It allows you to get where you want to get really fast. Now, one thing I would do, Photoshop has the ability to add grain, Lightroom has the ability to add grain, and frankly, they're both terrible at it. If you want to add grain to your images, then the answer is do it in Silver Efex. So if I want to just add a little bit of grain, I'm going to come down to 4 1/4 or so, make it a little on the harder side. And if we zoom in fact, let's zoom into 100%. We get to see, as this continues to draw, we get to see a little bit of grain. And if you really want to see what it looks like, we can bring the grain per pixel down, and that makes it really rough, which I don't like for this image. As I've said before, I generally like from 375 to 4 1/4 or so. At 4 1/4, it is a very fine grain, but to me, a black and white image, when I see it on black and white film, I'm expecting some grain, so I do generally like that. You can also make the grain soft, or you can make it hard, which makes it a little more sandy kind of looking. In this case, I'm going to go a little bit softer, and I think that it looks good. Yeah, I think we're good there. Let's go full screen that, and one last peek. There's our original, our regular straight raw black and white conversion, and then what we did to it using Silver Efex. Very happy with that. Hit OK, and it will create another layer with our black and white conversion. All right, so there's our black and white layer. Well, there's our original. What if I wanted to take a black and white conversion and put it underneath our conversion? So there's our black and white conversion, and then on top of that, add the Silver Efex. So here's our black and white, here's the Silver Efex. Now, this is just showing the Silver Efex at 100%. What if I want somewhere halfway in between? I can go to the opacity of this layer and start to bring it back. So there's the first, just the black and white conversion in Photoshop, and maybe add not all, but some, say 50 or 60% of the conversion that Silver Efex did. If you think maybe this is a little too strong, maybe you want to back off on it a little bit. And this is to taste at this point. This is whatever you find interesting. And I'm going to go about right there, 70%. And at 70%, we're getting a lot of the Silver Efex effects that happened above and beyond the straight black and white, but we're maintaining a little bit of what the black and white had as well. So if we zoom in on this, Let's take a look at it full screen. And there's our image with a combination of silver effects as a layer, backed off a little bit with the black and white conversion over top of our original image. And I think we have a winner here. I think this is really, really nice. So let me just fit this to the screen. And now we need to save this. So if you're ready to save this to send out to the lab, I'm going to get rid of these extra layers. Let's just get rid of those. And I'm going to do, actually, you know what? I'm going to flatten it. Let's just flatten the image. Since this is ready to go, I would save a copy with all my layers first. And this is just the final prep for sending this image out to the lab. So we're going to do a save as, and we're going to get a dialog box. And I have my folder for my DSI images, but look at here. It says the color profile is ProPhoto RGB, not with the one I want. I want this to be, first of all, I do want it to be a TIFF file, but I want it to be an Adobe RGB. So I'm going to cancel. And one extra step I need to do is go to Edit, Convert to Profile. And I'm going to change this from ProPhoto RGB to Adobe RGB. And perceptual is fine. Yes, black point compensation. Hit OK. That will save that. Now I can save this as my TIFF file. And I'm going to call this, this happens to be Jackson Lake in Grand Teton. And we're going to save this as a TIFF file. And I'm going to put it in my folder to be sent to Digital Silver Imaging. So we hear a TIFF file, color profile, OK. Hit save. We had already told it was 300 dpi, no image compression. Everything else is going to be fine for the defaults. Save that, and we have now an image sitting in our folder ready to send off to DSI. And I know the results are going to be great because I can show them to you now. So that was a couple of different ways that you can convert to black and white using Photoshop. Are there more? Yes, we could have spent hours doing this. But I wanted to show you a couple of basic ways that are fairly simple to follow that you can put to use right away and will get you great results. So explore it, give it a try. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you online again soon. Bye-bye.